Here I've got a Roland JX3P coming live and direct from 1983. And here I've got the KIWI 3P upgrade. And here I've got the Retroactive PG2K controller for it. So let's have a little bit of synth fun.
Right then, Starsky, before you start, I know what you like. You're going to say some flippant off-the-cuff remark and wind everyone up.
Okay, keep your hair on. I'm not just going to blurt out, am I, that it's got a rubbish interface, looks a bit crap, and the MIDI implementation's virtually non-existent.
Yeah, exactly that. So what's what you say? You know how angry people get in the comments.
Don't worry, I'll say something much more considered. I'll talk about how it's got 2 oscillators, it's got sync, it's got that metal FM thing, and once you bring in the retroactive controller and you bring in the KIWI mod, it's just massively more flexible, because that's what this is about.
Yeah, okay, but just go easy on the negatives, will ya? You know it's underrated, you know it's gone under the radar, and you know that no matter what people say, it can do PWM.
What, like this? I mean, there are about 3 pages in the instruction manual telling you how to do it, so I don't see how anyone could say it doesn't have PWM, although it isn't on the one oscillator and it's not as flexible as other things, but it's definitely there. But no, I think I'm going to concentrate on what it is as a synth, and then have a little play with the retroactive controller with the KIWI mod.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
By the way, why are you dressed like that?
I'm trying to look like a director.
Are you still in your pyjamas?
Might be.
Here's eBay in the UK today, $690, $990 buy it now. That seems quite a lot. $1,200 including the PG200 controller, $720 with the Organics mod. The Organics is a separate mod to the KIWI mod. It's less complex, it's a bit cheaper, but they don't make it anymore. Here we go, the JX3P and the PG200 for $808. $573, that's in the US. And then of course you've got the boutique offerings. And don't forget, we've also got it on the System 8 as well now. But why is it so much cheaper than the Junos? On the face of it, it's a 6-voice DCO synth, just like the Junos. It's got 64 memory slots. We can see it A, B, C and D, A and B, B in the presets, C and D being user presets, which is the same as the 106. I think it's got 2 banks of 64, hasn't it? We've also got a chorus down here. We've got a 5-octave keyboard. But this has got 2 oscillators per voice. The 106 has got the square wave, the saw wave, noise, and the sub. This has got 2 distinct separate oscillators, so you can detune them, you can get sync. You've got an FM style thing on this called metal. So on the face of it, it's a much more flexible synth, and I think the voice chips and the filter chip are the same as the 106. At least that's what it says on vintagesynth.com. And the main problem is obviously this interface. So you can see here we've got a single dial in the edit section, and that's to edit every parameter. So let's just turn it on. I'll show you how it works. On the right hand side, we've got this diagram that shows all of the various parameters of the synth. Each of them are numbered, and they're in a white circle or a red circle. Over here we've got Group A or Group B. In the edit section, Group A is white, Group B is red. So to edit it, we just simply press Group A or Group B. See they're flashing, and now we're flashing on 1, which means we're going to edit DCO1 range. But let's go and edit the filter, because obviously that makes things really obviously audible. So that's 1 over here. Cut off frequency 1 in red, so we go to Group B, 1, and we can actually see where it's set with this light here. So we can see that moving up and down. So actually, once you get to know it, it's not that difficult. Let's change the resonance. Resonance is 4, press 4. Change the cutoff again. Let's try and beef that up a little bit. Go to the envelope mod and let's turn that off. So hit number 5, bring that down to 0, then go back to the cutoff. And you can sort of see how it works. Let's make sure we're listening to a single oscillator. So the mix of DCO1 and DCO2 is 15 white, so Group A 15. There you go, single oscillator. Let's make sure that's a sawtooth. It sounds like one. If we go to DCO range, go to waveform, so that's 2. Now this has only got 3 distinct values, so we use these buttons over here. Square, pulse, sawtooth. I don't know, let's put that onto a gate rather than the envelope for the amplifier. So where are we? VCA, gate or envelope is number 7. So red 7, it's on envelope, now it's on gate. So once you know your way around it, it's pretty simple, but back in the 80s, nobody knew what they were doing with synths. The 106 comes along, really simple. You start tweaking with all the parameters and you can hear things instantly. You can learn it really quickly. With this, you have to know what you want to do. Like I've been saying there, let's change the cutoff, let's change the resonance, let's put it onto a single oscillator. You've got to know you want to do that before you can do it. So if you're a synth designer and you're making the synth, it's perfectly obvious. But if you're a teenager or a young adult in a shop back in 1983 thinking you want to get a synthesizer, you look at this, it just looks a bit lame. And to have things like, I don't know, electric piano 1, brass and organ printed on the front panel doesn't scream exciting. Well, at least it didn't to me. So this interface is a little bit rubbish. It looks a little bit crap. And then there's a couple of other issues that you might not realize. One is that it doesn't accept CC messages, so you can't control it from your DAW in the state it's in. The Organics mod changes that so that you can use MIDI CC, as does the KIWI mod. But as it was, you couldn't do that. It uses a special language to be controlled by the PG-200 controller, and that itself cost almost as much as the synth on the second-hand market, so not a lot of people bought it. And even if you do have the PG-200 controller, you can't play it via your DAW and tweak it, because you've got a switch at the back here, which will switch it to controller control or MIDI control. So you can't play a line with the DAW and then tweak it to your heart's content. It's just not possible in the state it's in. It has to be upgraded. You could do it with the 106, you could even do it with the Alpha Junos if you knew what you were doing. With this, not a chance, which is why it sort of fell by the wayside. But these days, with the mods, we've got a pretty good value, if you can call £600, £700, £800 good value for a 6-voice vintage synth, a pretty good value 2-oscillator synth. But it does have an onboard sequencer, so you can sync the sequence up to other stuff and then tweak it live using a controller just like this. Unlike the Juno controller I demoed a couple of years ago, this isn't just a controller. It's not a simple replacement for the PG-200. It does lots of new things like you might expect. You can save patches on it, for example. You can set up an initial patch. If you've got the KIWI mod, you can put sequences in it. You can put patterns like LFO patterns in there. You can do all sorts of things with it. You can store sound banks. If we press shift and load, we can go and load sound banks that are in this itself, not stuff on the synth. We've got a patch generator, for example. We can change what we want to change on the patch generator, but let's just try everything for now. So we're on strings 1, enter, random, generating a tone. Something weird there. But you can go in and you can change which of the parameters it will actually randomize. but it's a bit cleverer than just doing random tones, bass tones, different types of bass tones. Poly, pads, effects, pianos, strings. Let's try poly. Nice. Let's try poly res. Definitely a poly res tone. Let's try one with release. Yeah, loads of stuff in here. Let's try piano. Piano-esque. Strings. Oh yeah, it worked brilliantly this, doesn't it? Yeah, lovely little addition. We've also got a chord mode. If we go into MIDI here, we can see we've got a chord mode there, and they're the different notes that it's playing, based on a C3, I think it is. And that's something the synth can't do on its own. It's actually adding extra functionality without any of the upgrades. One of my favourite things on this from a performance perspective is this little assign slider here. We can assign 5 different destinations to this slider. Here, I'm using 4 destinations, I think. If I come here, I've got the cutoff, LFO1 rate, LFO1 depth on the cutoff, and resonance. And you can set minimum and maximum values for that. So and we're just in the cutoff, but I'm not sending it to value 128. I'm sending it to a maximum of 67. So it gives you really fine control of a number of parameters, and you haven't just got this as a controller. You can use an expression pedal, aftertouch, or up to 3 different MIDI CCs. So each of those CCs can control 5 different parameters. Really nice little addition. And if we look at the front of this as well, you can see that we've got envelope 1, envelope 2, and I can't change it from envelope 1 to envelope 2 because the synth itself, as it comes, doesn't have envelope 2. You can see I've set it to use a stock JX3P mode. You can have it as the MKS30, the KIWI 3P, the KIWI 3P Matrix, or the KIWI 30, or the Tourntech. So let's throw in the KIWI update. So here we are inside the synth. Just took off a couple of screws off the side panels and then a few off the front and the rear at the bottom. And you can see here, this is the main chip. This is the KIWI chip. I've already replaced the socket. I say somebody, Barney, has done that for me. So it should be a really, really simple replacement now. So let's put it back together. Well, at least pretend to put it back together and just see if it works. Okay, I've done something wrong there, it's just buzzing. Okay, so I finally got it installed, and it was a little bit of a pain in the backside, to be honest. The slot that I'd put it into, or that had been fitted to the board, the pins just wouldn't go in it, so I've ended up slotting the chip into a slot and then putting that slot into the slot on the board because it was bending the board far too much. So it's a bit like a stack of a stack of these slots. This is the original chip, and I've just put it into one of these as well, just to keep the pins safe. But yeah, so I've got that on the board, the KIWI into a slot and the slot into another slot. It was an absolute pain to do, to be honest. and it was rather scary, but it's all working now. I also realized that oscillator 2 or DCO2 was out of tune, so that was just a real little tweak of this little screw here, L2 it's called on the board, and now everything seems to be working absolutely fine. So let's take a look at what we've got over here. If I press shift and init, we've got ourselves a really simple tone. Now what the KIWI mod does is it adds an extra LFO, it adds an extra envelope. In fact, there's loads of different stuff it does. If we look here, we can see there's just tons of things. So I'm not just gonna read all those out. You can go to the kiwitechnics.com website and find out for yourself, but I'll go through the main bits here. But the most important thing to realize is that these buttons now don't do what they did earlier. So for example, because we've got more controls, we can't just fit everything in this group A and group B on these 16 different buttons here. We've got too many controls. So to access the filter cutoff, for example, it's no longer on group A, it's on actually group C. You've got 4 different groups of parameters. And if we take a look at this is a synth graphics overlay for it. I don't think there's any, well, it says there's none in stock up here, but actually I'm not sure whether they're still making them. But if you look at this image down here, you can see DCO1, DCO2, VCF and VCA. So there's 4 different banks of parameters, and you access those via these 4 buttons here. So to do the cutoff, for example, you go into edit mode by pressing take memory and write, and then we'll go into C, and C, as we can see on that image, is the VCF. So if we wiggle this now, there we go, we're on VCF. Cutoff, 2 is the resonance. So if you're using the synth itself, everything's changed, and that's why there's overlays, and that's why with these mods, you know, you've got to get your head around exactly what it's doing, or you try and get a software editor, or you try and get something like this Retroactive PG2K, and you don't have to worry about any of that because it's all on the front panel. There you go, cut off, resonance, you get the idea. I'll just zoom into this a little bit better. You can see here we've got envelope 1. Let's make envelope 1 look completely different to envelope 2. There you go, completely different. And then you can use envelope 1 or envelope 2 on the VCF. You can use envelope 1 or envelope 2 on the VCA. Now I've got 2 LFOs, LFO1, LFO2. So there's LFO1 wave, LFO2 wave, different rates. I've not put the chorus rate mod in as well. But we can access envelope 1 and 2 everywhere you've got an envelope, LFO1 or LFO2. So that's the DCO tuning, LFO1 or LFO2 on the VCF. So all in all, it's making it a much, much more complex synth, but with the controller, it doesn't feel like it's much more complex, but I can imagine if you had it without the controller, it might get quite confusing. Now I've had a Jupiter 6 with Europa mod, and I found that a real faff, to be honest. Glad it broke in the end. I've got a P600 and that's got a mod as well, but that's not so bad because it's got a little LED display, so you can sort of work out what's going on. It's got the little touchpad on the left-hand side, and you can sort of work out what's happening, whereas on a lot of the others, it's really difficult. So if you are gonna get something like the mods, I'd definitely suggest taking a look at which controllers you can use. Once you've modded it, the PG200 controller won't work. Well, it won't work with the KIWI mod, at least. So you will have to look at getting something like this, and I can't recommend this highly enough, actually. I've been playing with this without the mod, really enjoyed it. Added the mod, and I was a little bit in 2 minds about the mod because people have mentioned that the envelopes aren't the same and that the sounds don't sound the same. It changes the character of the synth. But if you take a look at this image here, these are some envelopes I've just done a little test on. Before I put the mod in, I maxed out the ADSR on the original. In the middle is the normal mode for the envelopes on the KIWI mod. On the bottom is the slow mode on the KIWI mod, and you can see they are ever so slightly different. The release stages are definitely different on the normal envelope and the original, and obviously the slow mode is a lot longer. But to me, it's not made much difference. I don't play the JX3P a lot. I've got it. I've had it for about a year. It was about £600 about 12 months ago. So I got it cheap, and that's why I thought I'd do a video showing it, because it's a cheap way of getting a vintage synth, and you get 2 oscillators. So it is a nice 1980s Roland classic with Juno 106 filters and oscillators-ish, that sounds really good, but you do really need, I think, some sort of controller to get the most out of it anyway. Things like the pattern generator, for example. If we go into the pattern generator, let's put it on. For now, we'll modulate the VCF a lot, so we'll turn the level up a fair bit, turn the cutoff down. Let's make this, you can take this pattern up to 16, let's make it, well, could have made it 16, let's just make it 8 for now. And then we can just create a sort of, whatever pattern you want really. And then once we play, I'll turn it on. There is a quick way of doing that using the sliders as well. You can hear we're getting that pattern, but to do that on the synth itself is, as you can imagine, a bit of a pain. There's the sequencer on here as well. We can see we've got 2 channels. So let's put a bass line in and an arpeggiator or an arpeggio. Let's make it 16 long. Okay, and then let's come down. Let's put a bass line in first. We put that in quavers, and I just don't think you can see that on the camera, but there we go. So if I enter a few notes, you can see that they're 4 semi-quavers long. And then let's go back to the start and let's put a little arpeggiator in the top. Oh, just get myself in the right position. So press this, the encoder, and then press the semi-quaver. I just don't know if you can see that at all. Anyway, let's put something in. Okay, send that to the synth. Not the most amazing of sequences, but you get the idea. It makes everything so much easier. So I don't really want to go in and try and explain every single aspect of this. If you do have any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. But there's the manual. There's Espencraft's done a really good demo of how all this works on the Retroaktiv site. But I just thought I'd show it compared to the original 3P, using it with the PG2K, then the KIWI 3P with the PG2K, and from my mind, I wouldn't get the KIWI mod unless I had the PG2K or something as good as, and I don't think there is anything as good as this, to be honest. So I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere, and if it was, please do think about subscribing, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon. Everything really does help to support the channel. I buy stuff, I sell stuff, and I keep on losing money, so it really does help. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.